Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Biden campaign has reached a new low this election season, bringing out Robert De Niro to New York City. I guess they wanted him to be around the Trump trial, and it's a total joke. Why would anyone care what Robert De Niro says? Why would any of us middle class people care about him? This is what we like to call desperation, folks. Actor Robert De Niro gets into shouting match with a guy wearing a MAGA hat across the street. De Niro could be seen having a meltdown after a Trump supporter was heard calling him washed up. And of course, De Niro was there. He was wearing a mask outside. It makes total sense. It's all theater. It's ridiculous. And De Niro goes out and fearmongers and talks about how Donald Trump is so bad, he's evil, how he's going to remain in the White House. And guys, this is the pinnacle of gaslighting. When they talk about Donald Trump remaining in power, causing World War III, he's not going to leave the White House. Remember when Biden was sworn in? He was scheduled to be sworn in on January 20th of 2020. And so what day was Joe Biden actually sworn in? Because if you listen to some of these Democrats, my God, Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump might have called on the Third Reich to go up to the Capitol and just completely destroy the entire thing. Maybe light some bottles on fire, create a little Molotov cocktail. Oh wait, that was BLM. I got it mixed up, I'm sorry. But yeah, so the Democrats will have you believe that Donald Trump was doing, he restricted Joe Biden from entering the White House. There was no transfer of power. Biden was scheduled to be sworn in on January 20th. Biden was actually sworn in on January 20th. So Trump left the White House, and you can say, well, he challenged the election, and we're going to get into January 6th because that's really the heart of this whole thing, and that's what they're going to start hammering. And you can see De Niro reading from a script, literally sitting there. He didn't even memorize it. He's trying to fumble through the script because it's waving in the wind. He can't see the words, but it's January 6th, January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. That's all this election is going to be about. Of course, not about the economy. Well, you know what? Let me say this right here, right now. Guys, I've been meaning to say this. So I will be eligible to run for president in the year 2036. And I've just been so inspired by Joe Biden and this amazing economy. Guys, if you don't like this economy, you're crazy. Look at the stock market. But it gets better, guys. It gets better. When I get into the White House in 2036, obviously I'm going to run my campaign. It's going to be great. I think I'm going to run as a liberal. And this is my pitch to the American people. This is all we have to do. I can make everyone a millionaire right now. And this is what Joe Biden wants to do. All we have to do is print $1 quintillion. That's all we have to do. Everyone becomes a millionaire. How can you not like that economy? Everyone's a millionaire. That's perfect. See how ridiculous it is with Biden and the argument about the economy and the stock market going up. Trump, during the debate, needs to bring all of this up because we already know Biden's going to be talking about the stock market and how it's just so ridiculous to even mention that when you're talking about the inflation and you compare it. And we've really only seen a net growth of 1% under the Biden administration, which is historically bad considering how good America normally is. When you factor in inflation, it brings it down. They're like, oh, Biden's economy performed better than Trump's. Yeah, I guess, if you're Trump, all you got to do now is print $2 bazillion, and I guess the Democrats will praise you. But we know Biden's going to bring up January 6th during the debate in June. He's going to try and hit Trump and say, oh, the economy's better under me, which is totally ridiculous. And if you're Trump, you have to be able to refute these things. The January 6th stuff, it's a talking point that the Democrats have quickly shifted to. As they try and control the narrative, they realize the bogus New York trial is not going anywhere, and it's actually helping Trump. So they have to go to New York. They have to put an actor up who's a multimillionaire, and he's going to tell us who we should vote for and who's dangerous because he knows more than us, and he's the person that will, I guess, sway independents. At least that's what they're hoping. Obviously, that is not going to be the case, and you can see Donald Trump actually gaining in terms of the favorability rating. You can see last year he was around a -25. He's gained 11 points. He's down to a -14. And even independents are coming out and saying, I've done a 180 on Trump. He's actually a patriot. It's shocking. He's sacrificing himself. You hear all these stories from independent people They're like, yeah, Trump's a billionaire. I kind of bought into it. I see he's this elitist guy. But now I see that if Donald Trump never ran for office, he would have none of these problems. He would never be in court, even if he committed worse crimes. We know how a lot of these elite people get away with it when they've got billions and billions of dollars, but it's the system that is going after Trump, and he's taking it, and he's appearing in court. It's all totally ridiculous. And now independents have said, I've done a 180. Even though he's a billionaire, even though he has his flaws, he is fighting for American freedom, and he's putting his money where his mouth is, appearing at these sham trials, which is obviously helping him. And I think Trump goes into office, his approval rating, it might be up to, 55, 60%. At least that's what people are saying. Some of the experts out there, they're looking at Trump and they're seeing the overwhelming rise in popularity. You talk about -25 to -14. And now there's a lot of estimates saying it's like -3, -2. Trump's actually liked by a lot of independents, obviously, pretty much all conservatives. And we do have an update. This is actually a really nice look at the overall polls. You can see this is based off of, normally I think they take around 2 to 6 polls. It's just the aggregate average, but they do have a lot of rare states in here. So the overall national poll right now, Trump up by 1.5 points. Obviously, the popular vote, not too important. The reason that number is significant, though, is because if you go back to 2020 and 2016, and by the way, here's the new cope that they're using. Well, the 2022 midterms overvalued Republicans, and they're trying to say that midterms are the same as a general election. It's totally ridiculous. Donald Trump was not on the ballot during the midterms. Trump is going to turn out more people. You cannot compare midterm survey results versus the general election. If you want to compare polls and previous polls, you go to 2020 or 2016. You compare midterms with a general election, you're comparing apples to oranges. It's ridiculous. So they say, and by the way, the polls were actually, as an aggregate, correct on the Republicans' performance. In terms of the overall popular vote, they won it by about 2.5 points. The main issue is it was split literally the worst way between the states, so the Republicans underperformed in terms of that. But the popular vote was relatively the same. So when you look at the 1.6 Trump lead, go back to 2020 at this time, Biden was leading by 5 points. 2016, Hillary was leading by 10 points. That's another thing. I was rewatching some stuff from 2015, 2016. The Democrats never thought that they would be in this position. The Democrats thought by 2024, Iowa would be a liberal state. Texas would possibly be flipping. I mean, some of that math in 2016 was scary for Republicans, but now it's totally different with Ohio and Florida as pure Republican states, and you look at other states like Arizona and Nevada trending heavily to the right. And then on top of that, you've potentially got an ace up your sleeve with a state like Minnesota, which is just the total knockout punch if you're able to run the gauntlet of the Rust Belt, win those 3 states, and then deliver the knockout to Biden. So going down the list, Trump, Biden, head-to-head, Washington, certainly we expect Biden to win. He's up by 12 there. Trump's up by 2.5. Well, I think Trump's up by a little bit more than 2.5 in Arizona. I'm not sure the polls that they use on this website. He's up by like 3.5, 4. Massachusetts, Biden's up by about 30. Michigan, wow, that's interesting. So at least according to this, Trump is up by more in Michigan than he is in Arizona, which really doesn't reflect those states. I think Michigan is a pure swing state. Arizona's leaning Trump. Nevada, Trump up by 6. That makes sense. New Hampshire, Biden up by 3. There's another state. It is only 4 electoral votes. Nobody's going to really care, but it's a close state. We'll see, especially when you bring in RFK. You do have North Carolina, Trump up by 5.5. He's controlled that state, the polling, for the last 5 or 6 months. I don't think he's lost a single poll. Pennsylvania, Trump up around 3. Rhode Island, Biden up 19. South Dakota, just one recent poll with Trump up big, obviously. And then Wisconsin, Biden up by 1%, mainly because of an outlier poll from Quinnipiac that had Biden up by 6. If you take that out, it's basically tied, or maybe Trump's actually ahead in Wisconsin. But either way, obviously these numbers are very good for Trump. You've got the Democrats seething. They're freaking out. The advisors to Biden, they have to call in Robert De Niro outside in New York City in the wind, and he's got a mask on, and he's saying that Trump is a threat. He's terrible. It is unbelievable how desperate they've already gotten. And the question is, everyone wonders, are they going to remove Biden, this, that, and the other? It's just impossible to replace him. You're not going to replace him with Kamala. Kamala undoubtedly is less popular than Biden. It's not even close. There was actually polls that were done, Kamala Harris versus Trump, and then they did Biden versus Trump, and Biden performs about 3 or 4 points better than Harris in basically every state. I think if Trump faced Kamala Harris, I think Trump might have 400 electoral votes. I think hypothetically, Trump versus Kamala Harris, he might win California. Honestly, it would be a total bloodbath. But in terms of Trump Biden, obviously, I think Biden is their best chance right now. You could argue, well, maybe Gavin Newsom. I don't see Newsom as a legitimate option at this point. They would have done it earlier, so I do think they are trying to roll with Biden. And that's why they scheduled the debate early. They're trying to turn the tide. And we know what Biden's going to say. It's all about January 6th. He's not going to talk about Hamas. He's not going to talk about Israel. He's not going to talk about Ukraine or Russia, even though the narrative back in 2016 when Trump won was that, I mean, the world was over. Trump was going to plunge us into World War III. No wars happened, and then 2 happened under the Biden administration, and they're still trying to fearmonger that Trump is this terrible figure who's going to just destroy our country, and he's not going to leave the White House, even though Biden was scheduled to be sworn in on January 20th. And oh my goodness, guess the date he was actually sworn in? January 20th.